Corey Dunham, and I'm just going to be announcing the speaker, and I'm the host for Welcome to LA2M, where we have monthly marketing meetings, and basically for education and also networking opportunities. Thank you all for coming. We do have a board that runs our meetings. I'm not going to announce them all because we'll have a chance afterward to introduce, everybody will introduce themselves. You can find out then. But we have a number of people on our board. We only have one paid member who's an admin. So most of us are volunteer. We try to put great meetings that are educational. And we also want your input. So after the meeting, I'm going to ask for your input so we can keep getting good content and good feedback from you guys. We normally have meeting sponsors. We don't have one for today. And we also have yearly sponsors, which my company, BDB Marketing Design, is one of the sponsors where we help companies who are struggling to keep up with their marketing and they realize it's affecting their business, whether it's their web development or their advertising or email marketing, whatever it is. We also have University of Michigan Credit Union, and we also have 3.7 Designs, which are not here today. But that's what helps support our meetings, is these sponsors, your attendance, and I'm just going to start right in. Some of the feedback we've gotten is that we want to cut this part down so we can get right to our speaker. So today's speaker is Matt Hansen, and he's going to be talking about branding and why branding is more than just the logo. So Matt, if you're ready, or did I?
As ready as I'll ever be.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Matt.
All right. So my first goal is not to spill this water all over my laptop. So we'll see how that goes. So first of all, I just wanted to say, thank you for having me to this. This is such a cool group, and I was just talking to Stacy. I didn't know this existed until I got invited to do a talk here. And Arbor has several little environments like this, and it's such a great city and great environment that people take time out of the middle of their day to come learn and share and exchange ideas. So I'm really grateful and honored to be here in the group for the first time as a speaker, and I'll certainly be here down the road to hopefully hear from you all and talk with you more. But we'll get right to business. We're talking about branding today, and specifically why branding is more than a logo. A lot of the idea behind this comes from social media posts I see about branding and the wrath and anger that I have that's associated with kind of misinformation that goes along with that. So we'll jump into that now. A quick agenda. The number one thing we're going to do is have fun, hopefully all the way through, but at least at the beginning. We'll learn what branding really is. I'm going to try to stay focused while others are eating delicious wings. Learn how to build a brand mindfully, which is something that I do a lot at my business, Huck, Finch. We're going to have an exercise. I always like to just have some sort of action involved with this so you can actually take something away that hopefully helps you or the clients that you work with. Then I'm going to finally eat delicious wings potentially, and then Q&A if we have any time left over, either as a group or if people want to come up and ask me questions afterwards, I'll hang out as well. So first, who is this bozo? The most important slide of all. Why are you all here listening to me? Some of you may know, some of you may not. But I have a brand strategy agency that I'm the co-founder of called Huck, Finch. And basically, we really focus on the strategic portions of branding, which we'll talk a lot about today. And also, I want to make sure I'm the chief visionary, which doesn't really mean anything. It just kind of sounds cool and is the byproduct of me probably going to too many conferences in San Francisco. But what that certainly means is that I don't have any ego about it. So I want to share some credit with my co-founder, Han, and you can see his arm right there. This is just me being really bitter that he's in Vietnam on vacation right now, and I'm here in very, very cold Michigan. But the only name that you really need to remember today is Allen Iverson. Yes, NBA basketball star Allen Iverson. So it's a bit of a reach to use Allen Iverson as the centerpiece to a branding conversation, but bear with me. Hopefully it will make sense. And we're going to jump right to Allen. And Allen Iverson was a great basketball player, mostly known as a scorer. He didn't really pass that much, not known as a great teammate. And he always got blasted by the media for not participating in practice, not giving it his all in practice. He finally, at one press conference, said, "We're talking about practice, not the game that I die for." And it's sort of become this famous GIF throughout time and this meme. And that's how I feel about logos and how they're portrayed, especially on social media, and usually how it's communicated. A lot of you here are marketers, so it's a little different audience, but a lot of people are learning about branding from social media, and they're just seeing something like this. Branding is everything. And then there's a cup with coffee, and then there's a cup with a Starbucks logo on it, and the net of that is $2. So they're just like, I need a logo. So they go to 99 Designs, they go to hopefully one of you guys, and they're like, this is gonna change the game, right? We've gotta get this logo on our cups, on our cars, on our business cards, we need a new website, whatever. And on we go. I think the most outrageous thing here is that it's saying that Starbucks coffee is only $3.25. That seems a little low. But this really makes me like lose my mind because there's a huge gap between the cup without the logo and the cup with one. Starbucks certainly didn't just say, I had this idea to put a logo on a cup, we're gonna blow everyone's mind, right? So that idea is silly, which was Alan Iverson's next response, which was, we're talking about practice. How silly is that? We're not talking about the actual game. So today the game is what branding actually is. Beyond the logo. It's not that logos aren't a part of a brand, of course they are, but too often it's kind of like 90-10, and then there's like 10% of, the rest is just filled up with like whatever Apple is for a lot of people, right? Like they just love that, they love branding because they love the Apple brand, but they're not quite sure what any of that means. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today. So what is branding then? If it's not just a logo, if it's really not your logo and your colors and your typography, that's a brand identity for those of you that do branding work. That's the visual representation of it, but it should be kind of the end product of a lot of other things. So what is branding then? There's a ton of definitions of this on the internet if you Googled it, which is part of the reason everyone sucks at it because it's just really confusing. It's usually like kind of touchy-feely and people don't really know how to do it. It's just kind of like, this is what it is. And then if you're a small business owner especially, or you're a startup or people like that, you're just kind of like, I want a great brand. It's like, that's all you've really accomplished. That sounds cool. So I want to simplify it a little bit and provide some definitions that I like most today. So this is from Elena Wheeler. If any of you do visual identity work, she literally wrote the book on visual identity, brand identity, which there's like 5 volumes of now. She's great. She says branding is a disciplined process used to build awareness and extend customer loyalty. It requires a mandate from the top and a readiness to invest in the future. Branding is about seizing every opportunity to express why people should choose one brand over another. A desire to lead, outpace the competition, give employees the best tools, reach customers, and these are all the reasons why companies leverage branding. It's not that this is wrong, it's all right. But what are you really supposed to do with that, right? What is branding? It tends to kind of feel a little bit like this if you're trying to do it on your own. You just don't know what you're actually supposed to do to build that brand. So it all comes out in what we recognize to be a brand, which is just the visual portion of it. The rest is kind of skipped. So those 3 definitions on the previous slide weren't even 3 definitions. That was just 3 parts of her definition of branding. It's like 3 paragraphs just to define this stuff. So I really do want to simplify it, and this might be oversimplifying, but hopefully you all can leave today and remember just this very simple idea. Branding is the work of building a brand. It's the hard work of building a brand, I would sort of posit. Like it is the meat and potatoes of the end product that we often see to the recognizable part. So, why does everything have to be such hard work? You've seen 12 slides, 3 GIFs, 1 meme, just to learn that branding is hard work. Yes, that's what's happening right now, and again, that's my punishment to you all because you're eating and I'm not. But there are some ways that you can do this, even if you're a small company, you're a startup, even like those of you that are marketers that do branding, you can take some easy, quick-hitting things to your clients or use them on yourselves, hopefully both. So we'll touch on those today and make sure that you can go home with some ways to get that started. But now we haven't even actually described what a brand is yet. We've talked about branding, we've talked about brand identities, the visual identities, and all of those things. But we want to make sure we actually know what we're trying to build. What is a brand beyond just the word? So your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. This is my favorite definition of a brand. It's kind of popular. I have the almighty Bezos up here as the credit, which I think it might just be one of those Abraham Lincoln things where like every great quote gets attributed to him because he owns the world. But we're going to give him the credit for it anyway. But what I love about this specific definition is there's some emotion attached to it. And it's kind of like a guttural emotion, at least for me. It's kind of scary to think about what people are saying about you when you're not in the room. Like even just as a person, not as a business, you're like, it's a little bit uneasy to think about. But it's a great quote. I'm going to give credit to the almighty Bezos because of course I am. Because any dude who can go from this in 1998 to this in 2017, I sell books to I sell whatever I want, gets the credit. He wins the quote on a slide award. But back to that emotion that comes out of that definition of what are other people saying about you when you leave the room, right? It's terrifying. It's terrifying to think about. And oftentimes it comes down to we do a pitch or a proposal or whatever, and we're really just asking the question, I hope did we win? Does everyone on my team think that we won this quote, this proposal? Did we actually do a good job, whatever a good job might be? And I think it really comes down to some intentional ideas about how you express this and how you kind of decide what you left them with. And there's kind of two questions that I think drive from that quote that make a great litmus test for if you're on brand, even in in-person encounters, just away from the visual aspects of it entirely. You go into a meeting, you're doing a presentation, whatever it might be, what did you go into that room? Did you have an intentional idea of what you want to leave them with in terms of what your brand is? Or you just go to try to knock it out? Like, did you know what you're trying to represent, what your brand was before you walked into that room? And then the following question is pretty obvious, right? What feeling did you leave them with? And that's hard to know. It's hard to know what that feeling is, but you definitely will not accomplish it if you don't walk into that room understanding what feeling you're trying to leave them with. So asking those two questions is critical. The second part is harder to determine, which is even more terrifying, which is actually going to the customers and asking them what feeling you left them with, especially the ones you lose. And it's like, why would they want to talk to me? They didn't even buy from me. A lot of times people are really, really wide open to the idea that you want to get better. Maybe you don't even have any table stakes at that point. You're like, we're just trying to get better. I really want to make sure that I'm expressing to you what our brand is all about. What did you hear from us in that presentation? That's even more terrifying. It is the hard work of branding, just boiled down into those few questions. And yes, there's a ton more we're going to talk about today in terms of brand touch points, development of your value proposition, all of these messaging aspects that come along with it, the tone, what it looks like, all of those things. But really keeping those in mind, your best chance to be on brand is in those interactions. That is a brand touch point. Whether you're wearing a polo with your logo on it or not, that is a brand touch point. And how you're portraying it, how you're representing your brand is critical in those moments. So make sure that you're getting that feedback. So now that I've been blasting logos for the entire front half of this presentation, I do want to talk about why it's important and how you actually make your brand mark matter. And because there is some sort of weird thing where you always have to talk about Apple in any branding conversation, this is going to be my portion about that. So a logo is just a part of the brand, obviously. It's a tiny part. It goes along with all these other things. But let's do the obligatory look at the Apple logo. Just get weird with it. So what is this even? Who wants a half-eaten apple? Like the logo by itself. If you put that on a coffee cup, would people buy Starbucks coffee? Like, I don't know, maybe, right? It's just a half-eaten apple. What does it even mean? Why is the bite even missing? Does anyone know? Does anyone know what the bite is for? In a room full of marketers, maybe we know. If you do know, don't ruin my joke, but you're probably one of the 19,400,000 people who Googled to figure out what that bite meant. I think I'm one of those, probably. So, where the story behind it 19 million people are interested in what that story is. Is that because of the apple? Probably not. It's not really that interesting by itself. It's the branding that they've done to make that mark valuable that people are interested in. So where does it come from? The legend of the Apple logo, where is it born from? It could come from something like Steve Jobs went to a Zen retreat. They had to fast. They only had water available. On day 2.5, he was like, this is ridiculous. I've been coming here to examine life, examine business, the purpose of my business, this great thing I'm going to do, starting in 1997. And then he could have gotten really hungry, and he could have seen an apple on a bench, and he could have said, screw this, I'm going to eat this apple and get back to work. He might have walked over to that apple and seen that it had a bite taken out of it and said, this is a stranger's apple, I can't eat that apple. But he said, no, I'm going to think differently, I'm going to eat a stranger's apple. And thus, Think Different was born. That's not at all what happened. I made that up 3 hours ago. Basically, the real story of it, though, is Rob Janoff created the Apple logo in 1977. The bite is there to show scale. It's just a nice design move by him, right? It's a really nice design move. The other part, he didn't want people to think it was a cherry. That's it. That's it. Like logo designers in here, if you do any you're like, yeah, scale. Don't want it to be confused. But that's really all there is behind that mark when the mark is by itself. Now, of course, we know Apple is all these other great things. If there are PC nerds in here too, I get it. I get it. You're tired of hearing this, and Microsoft never makes these branding presentations, but it's okay. But here's what it really comes down to. They built so much brand equity. When the iPhone X came out, the same week that software launched, does anyone remember this? You type an I, you got an A and a question mark. This is like the most sophisticated piece of technology ever. Thinking different, elegant, simplicity, everything this brand goes for. The same week, they sold iPhone X's by the millions for $1,200 a piece. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's not to say that you can, once you build a brand, you can just roll out crap. You can't. But they've built up so much brand equity in this Think Different idea and all of their marketing that they could kind of get away with it. They had a bad day. Like, I could do a whole presentation about Apple Maps, but I won't. It sucks. But Apple does so many great things. They built up such a fan base, and their brand is so strong. I looked, it's worth like 70 billion more than number 2, which is Google. It's not even really close. So, why is that okay? Why does Apple get away with that? Why do people mourn the loss of a CEO? Not very rarely do we mourn the loss of like random CEOs, right? But people really felt his loss, and why did that matter? Because they believed in it. So the next piece of building your brand is just really thinking about, you've got to give them something to believe in, beyond just the delivery of your product or your service, whatever it might be. I felt so strongly about this slide that I didn't even come up with a clever subtitle for it. I just put it up there so it matches the others. Couldn't come up with anything. But what's important to think about, again, is creating an emotional tie. Like, so often we hear, like, if you're a marketing company, what's the difference between you and any other marketing agency? Right? You probably do the same bullet point things. I probably do some of the same bullet point things that you do. So you go and you say, we're really experienced, right? We've got the most experience. We've done all these things. Here are some other logos of people that we have worked with. And those are all important, but it's very hard to tell the difference. And it's very hard to get loyalty based on those things because you're just saying, we can do web design. We can do this for you. We can solve this problem. The next time they need web design help, maybe they come back to you if you do a good job, maybe they don't. They sort of solve their problem for that moment. So how do you create an emotional tie to this? Why is this important now more than ever? And there's a lot of studies, I think I was talking to David about this before, that have shown that people are in search of something to believe in now more than ever, which is why we see these super brand businesses coming to the forefront. It's really because we're in the data age now. And a lot of things that we grew up believing in have maybe crumbled a little bit. Whatever it is you like, Bill Cosby is a person who's not quite what he once was, right? It's a very different thing, and we have access to so much information. We often find out like things that we believed in when we were younger or years ago before we could Google anything are just not quite what they were. So people are constantly in search of companies that they can believe in, more than just companies that can solve whatever their problem is. So we're going to look at a brand that's near and dear to this community, which is Michigan football specifically. There's $1 billion tied to the Block M and the wing helmet. $1 billion. It's just a bunch of teenagers in costumes hitting each other, right? But it's so much more. It's so much more. It could be you went with your dad to football games growing up. It could be that you just had season tickets, or you just love football and you live in Ann Arbor and you want to be a part of the community. It could be because you literally owe the university $1 billion if you went to school there. Whatever it is that ties you to it, like if you're not a Michigan fan in this room right now, you're like cringing, which just shows again what the brand is. There's always one. Welcome to Ann Arbor. There's a lot of Michigan around you in this room, so this must be a nightmare. But to that point, there's a reaction. And that shows, like, people root for it. Often sports teams have fans, not customers, right? Why do sports teams have fans? It's the same thing. It's their customers. They have fans because there's an emotional tie to it. Because they're more than just, they're not rooting for football in general, right? They're rooting for their team, their emotional tie that they have to it.
I feel like that happens with not just sports. I constantly argue with my father-in-law about Apple. He's like, why would you pay that? My phone does everything that phone does. I'm like, no, it doesn't. Blah, 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 blah. My phone is better than your phone.
Yep.
Just like you would, Michigan's better than Ohio State, you know?
And think about marketing in a room full of marketers. Like, that's amazing. You're arguing. You're just having it out over a phone.
Yep.
It doesn't matter to you what phone they have, really, right? It doesn't change your day at all. But you're defending it. People do that with sports teams. And Apple is that brand. But there are so many more brands now that people have that loyalty to. Even if there's another option, even if it's a good option, they will defend it because they have that emotional tie to it for whatever reason. So we've kind of talked a little bit about these different things, and hopefully we had a little fun, laughed a few times, and talked about all these different elements of kind of the misnomer of what a logo means and what branding actually is. Does anyone remember what branding is? My definition? Any definition?
Building hard record building.
Hey, yeah. I wanted somebody to spout off that like 3-paragraph one. I'm just like, I guess so it's wrong. But yeah, just keeping that in mind. And the reason I bring that to the front is because branding is the hard work. It's work that's done every day. It's not a project. That's the difference between like a brand identity and branding. It's the verb. It's the act of doing it across all your touch points. So how do we actually build it? Like, what are the elements of it? We can't go into it all today. We do a bunch of different types of workshops to pull all this together. But I will make sure we leave you guys with some steps that you can use, hopefully some tactics that you can use in your brands and helping others. So the idea here is, making the sunflower yellow that you use or the Avener font mean something. What does it stand for when you get through these elements? So I'm going to ask this before we jump into it. Does anyone, this is probably somewhat familiar with just like the idea of brand touch points. Does anyone know kind of what that is, that terminology? If no, I'll explain. So it's pretty straightforward. All the different ways that your brand can touch your customers. And this is most often thought of, again, as the visual identity portion of a brand. What does everyone do when they start a business? Website, business cards, and then for some reason in every brand identity package you get those like really expensive envelopes that are like color-coded with logos on them that no one buys. So that seems to be like the core package that you get when you first start. But what these touch points are, those certainly are touch points. But this gets into, back to that, like if you're in a meeting, that's a brand touch point. When you answer the phone, a brand touch point. How are they expressing your brand? That's the work of branding, the everyday pieces. How are you expressing that through those elements? If you have staff that you manage or staff that like work for you, what opportunity do they have to do branding for you? Are they just answering the phone? How do they send emails? Like, these are opportunities to express what your brand is all about that are missed, and they are so frequent. The most frequent things, while we all try to drive a ton of traffic to our website, which is critically important, we ignore the stuff that we already have in terms of branding all the time. All the time, because we're like funneling people to where our brand looks really nice and put together, right? Which is, again, it's important, but it's not the only part. So these could be anything. Like if you have a bakery that delivers bread, for example, branding extends to the truck that it goes in, to the boxes that it's in, all of these elements. And what I want you all to think about today in your businesses are what are the 3 to 5 touch points that are the most important for you? What interactions, frequency is a really good sort of quick way to think about what those are. Like what happens every day? And are you doing any extension of your brand and what you want to be through those interactions? While you try to build these other things, while you try to build the website. Like if you have a business right now, you have opportunities already out there that don't require all the design work that takes time to get ready. So think about that as we go through this. So this is just kind of a circle. We've begged, borrowed, and stolen a lot of this to kind of put it together. Again, we do workshops a lot on the why of this. So who is your brand hero? We'll talk a little about what a brand hero is. What does the brand look like? How does the brand speak? And this all revolves around the why. Too often we go like, what does it look like? And then that's our branding, and we go on with our day. Like it looks real nice, but no one really cares, and no one really knows what it stands for. So we'll walk through some of these. We won't do an exercise with each of them, but I do want, if anyone has a pen and paper and your phone, you want to write these down, you can also email me or tweet at me or bat signal me or whatever, and I'll send you the deck. But describe the look, feel of your brand that you'd like to have. Not rocket science. But one thing I do want to point out here is the feel. So look gets us right back into that mode that I've been kind of speaking somewhat against. But feel is just like, write it down in paragraphs. Don't write down what color you want it to be. Write what you want it to feel like. Really awesome designers and creative people will help you get that feel, but write down what you want it to feel like. Not blue, unless you're like really trying to depress people or something, right? So think about that just for a moment. Like write these questions down. Again, reach out to me if you want these. I'll send them on. The second element is how. So again, if you've done branding, this is probably not unfamiliar types of questions, but describe the tone of voice or attitude of the brand that you'd like to have. I really like, again, attitude. Like tone and voice get overused all this time. People are like, sure, tone, voice, whatever. Attitude, like what is it? Like Han and I always joke with one another when we like sat down. We want to talk about things that generally are not presented in a fun way, hopefully with a little edge of fun. And we also had this like random thing, we always wanted there to be an action at the end of it, something that people could take with them. We're like, if we could be known as like fun with actionable, helpful information, that's good. That's the attitude we want. And we just referenced this like 70s movie called Action Jackson, which neither of us have ever even seen, but like we think about that when we're putting stuff together. We're like, is this Action Jackson or not? Like it's funny, it makes us laugh. And also we never forget that we can't just present like fluff and nonsense to people. There has to be something that they can take away. So think about that attitude. Or like, is it luxurious? Is it, whatever it is. So who is your hero or client? I'll talk about hero in a second. Who are you for? Who aren't you a good fit for? This is a lot of questions I love. So hero, we talk about the hero as being the client. It's interchangeable for us in how we build brands and how we build brand strategy. Too many companies build themselves as the hero. No one wants to like be the guy or the girl who hired the hero. They want to be the hero. So what do you do to put them in position to be a hero? So we always refer them in that way. It just changes how you think about it. It's like you're not the savior of the world. Even if you are, it's about putting them in position. Like back to Apple. They've done this since the 70s, way ahead of everyone else. Think different. They're just like, here's this computer. It's for creative people who get things done and think differently. Like, yeah, give me that. I'm going to change the world now. It's a different thing than just saying our computer specs are great, which is what you get on the PC side. And it doesn't, there's not as much loyalty baked into it. The loyalty from that almost comes from people who hate Apple and think it's too expensive. Like that's how good the brand is. Like people who don't like it are because they know exactly what it is. So think about the hero for the client. I was a philosophy major, so who are you for? It's like my favorite question ever. It seems really ambiguous, but it's really not in terms of business. Who are you for? Other than people who will pay you. Get beyond people who have money and give it to you. And that can be done easily by answering the next question. Who aren't you a good fit for? And like, if you don't have these clients or you've never had a client that you really hated working with, good on you, that's amazing, we should talk after this. But you can kind of use them as a persona, like, and think about why. Not just because they were like mean or whatever, that could be one. But what made the relationship tough? And also, there's a little hidden thing in here. You might not be the greatest fit for every single person. Your skill set, your personality, it might not be an exact great fit. It's possible that we are not the be-all, end-all for every single person out there. It's possible. That's all I'm saying. And then why? Back to the center of that circle. What are your beliefs and values? We believe in ... And what are the features and benefits that your brand, and again, these should be differentiators, right? Not like, we believe in good marketing. Get excited. But a lot of you are proactive because you're here today. So there's a lot of proactive people in here that are learning and exchanging ideas. You may have your beliefs and values. You may have them on your website even. You may have a mission statement, a vision. All these things may already happen. If you have those in place and you really like them, that's great. That's the best place to start. But what I would ask is, does everyone know what they are? Does your staff know what they are? If your staff doesn't know what they are and what they mean, they don't have any opportunity to do the work of branding for you. They're doing their own brand. They are, but not because they don't have that opportunity. So if you are the owner of a business, you manage people, it's a responsibility to make sure that they have a toolkit to actually do the work of branding. So if you have these, great, but if they are unknown, you don't really have them. Okay? Now that we've kind of gone through the elements of that circle, back to what are your most critical brand touch points. So thinking, I know you didn't have time to like work through and answer those with great thought, but thinking about what your off the top of the cuff answers are to those questions, how could you extend those out? Like every time someone calls you, you're probably not going to just say, hey, let me read you our vision and for the next 20 years, and here's our core values, and they're just like, hey, I just want to get a quote. It's not that, but it's about being creative and finding ways to incorporate your brand and empowering the people on your staff to bring your brand to life in ways beyond the logo, in ways beyond the colors on your website, and not relying on those marketing, finished, polished materials only to hold the brand up. Because if someone interacts with them and you have like fun, Action Jackson, whatever marketing materials, and no one has any fun and there was no action during their encounter and they were confused, it's not going to work. They're not going to care about the marketing materials nearly as much, and they're certainly not going to be a loyal fan, much less somebody who just kind of probably makes a purchase from you. Is this making sense? Any questions on touch points? Anybody like not sure if what they're thinking of is an actual touch point or not? Good? Okay. So now we're going to do exercise. I'm going to work off those wings. Not really going to do jumping jacks. It seems like a horrible idea. But what we are going to do is work on an onlyness statement. Anybody familiar with this? Any brand nerds in the world? Okay. So Martin Neumeyer is a big branding guru. He wrote a book called Zag, and then a book called The Brand Gap. Really good. Like if you want to learn and get some good context from branding, really worthwhile. One of the best branding books I would recommend, probably The Brand Gap. So this can get a bit wordy. So you're probably thinking the marketers in you is like, ooh, this is going to sound weird. This is mostly for internal use. And it's really just to set this piece in place. Because what happens if I switch this to like our elevator pitch exercise or something like that, if you and your coworkers are here, you will argue over semantics of what the adjectives and like power words are within that, because it's a different layer and it's going external out to the world. This is very straightforward, where the places that are in parentheses just kind of fill in the blank with your brand. So brand is the only professionally run what that creates a feature or benefit for a customer in city looking for a feature so they can benefit. Right? Straightforward. It's just like, it should be pretty plug and play. The reason that if I have to pick one, I pick this one, is it's great to build out those elevator pitches in front with a little bit more polish, but there's just not a lot in here. You just fill in the blanks. And you have that. And how we use it, we hang it up. Like when we're working, I have it on my background sometimes if I'm writing an email. Like, am I talking about the benefits, or am I responding to like, we don't do a lot of web design. We could, but we're better at the strategy stuff. So we let people who are more talented do that part of it. But what if I'm just talking about web design then because they can pay me? Am I doing what my brand is? Not really. I'm just trying to get money. A lot of ways to get money out there. But if you take the time, especially if you start your own business, it's hard. If you do all that work and build a business you don't want to work at, it sucks. I don't know how else to put it. So just being mindful about not doing that. So just to put it in context, this is ours. Again, it's wordy. It's not super marketing polished. We're not going to run out on our website. But Huck Finch is the only professionally run brand strategy agency that creates mindful brands for creative entrepreneurs in Ann Arbor that are looking for a clear path so that they can run the business of their dreams with intention. That's what we're all about. We do that through a channel of branding. We just want people that are like you, that are starting businesses, that are creating great things, to be mindful about what it is, mindful about building your brand, not spend a ton of money on a brand that you don't like 6 months later. A lot of times it seems like a great idea to buy like a crazy colored car, and 4 months later you're like, oh God, I have this for like 5 more years. It's similar to a brand. Like, and it doesn't have any meaning to you either, so it's not even just the color. You're just like, I don't like this color, I don't like the messaging. This is my business. I work on this 80 hours a week, and I don't go to my website because I don't like it. Now I need to spend another $20,000, rebrand, right? And it still won't mean anything if you haven't done these things. So this is the exercise now. I'm going to put this back up, and I would love to just have, like, take 3 minutes-ish or so. It shouldn't take much longer than that. And just kind of fill in these blanks. If you want to partner with somebody and kind of share it with them or share it with me, that would be great as well. But really, especially if you're here with somebody that works with you, both of you write it down, see if it's the same, see if it's even similar. And it's not to like call each other out, but the goal there is to close that gap. You guys should be talking the same. So is everyone cool with that? I don't know how we are on time. Are we okay?
Yeah. How much of your more of your presentation?
This is pretty much it. I'll say thank you when we're done. Can we do 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take 2 or 3 minutes. If everyone would like write them down, I won't do the thing where I just call on you. Maybe. Yes. So what we're going to do is pull all 4 of that. Yeah. All right, everyone can kind of wrap up. So as you wrap this up, the goal of all of this is really for this statement to be an internally driving force about what your brand is. And to empower everyone that you come in contact with to know your brand, but also all those touch points you can expand your brand towards. So, you know, we all just want to end up being like wizards that solve the world's problems and wear matching scarves. And that's what the brand ultimately is. It's that simple. Harry Potter's excellent branding. It's fantastic. Each of the houses, all of it. So that's the goal here with this statement, is to take it back, maybe hang it up in your office, maybe talk to some others about it, have them do it. It's amazing if you have 4 people from the same place doing this exercise, how different it is. It really is. So with that, I'll just say thank you. I appreciate your time. We'll be up here for more questions.
Any questions or comments for Matt?
Yeah.
I've seen different stories about what different logos mean, and one thing I wonder is, like, if you don't know, you won't know. Like with Amazon, the smile goes from A to Z.
Yeah. It's incredible, right?
And like until someone told me that,
yeah.
I didn't realize. Oh,
I didn't know it initially when I saw it either. I'm like looking for stuff like that. It's a smile. Yeah. It's a smile and from A to Z. Yeah, and I mean like really smart people tie all that together, right? But it is an amazing logo because theirs does actually literally tell a story in it. That's hard to pull off. It really is.
But if you don't, you know what I mean? It's like, it's great that they did that, but do people subconsciously?
I think it's kind of just cool. I mean, just speaking for myself, like, do I buy from Amazon because that? But it's like, do they sell everything from A to Z? Yeah, and then like also some stuff I don't even know that existed, right? So yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say too, and the fact that you're telling this story about them, also when that starts to happen, you start to get some things, you know, people understand what's going on, and people think, oh, Amazon is more cool than I thought.
Yeah. But if I had like an A and a Z in Huck Finch miraculously, like no one would be like, oh, did they do branding like A to Z? Like if I became as big as Amazon, people would start to be like, wow, let me Google what that logo is all about. And you're like, this company's so cool. You know, it's like it's on the back end of building a lot of brand equity. But that's also a great point is if you have great interactions at your brand touch points and you really put thought into it, and you just like, you can say things like, yeah, we have an about page. It tells like our whole story of how we got here. Like, you want some background on that? Or we can grab coffee sometime and I'll tell you my story. This is all about telling a story, right? So if you get people curious enough by the work that you do to be interested in your story enough to Google what it is, that's a really, really good position to be in. Like, that's great brand equity. And it's like, of course, Apple, Amazon, all these places, like, of course they have that, right? We all interact with these places almost inevitably each day. But you can do that too. Like, especially if you're marketing, you're working one-to-one with a lot of people all the time. You have so many opportunities to impact them and explain what your story is in little bits and pieces, or direct them to your story that's written, or send it to them. Better yet, go back. It's like, let me email your story, or the stories, and we'll meet for coffee and chat about it if you have a connection over it. You can be more proactive about it because, you know, there are no Amazons in here, I don't think. I invited Bezos, I don't know. But, you know, really thinking about ways to get your story out there. Everyone has one. Everyone has one. And those are the things that differentiate you, especially in a room full of marketers. You know, it's a lot of the same things. So what else is there? How do you make a fan? How do you make people go argue that they should be using your marketing service instead of the other one, like you did with the iPhone? Like, that can happen. You don't have to be a huge company to do that. Like, don't go anywhere else. That's the best recommendation ever. I just had these guys do marketing. They were friendly. They're fun. They think just like you. You have to go to them. Like, they're gonna go. But that's what you're trying to create out there in the world, and you can't do that by just like hoping they go Google you or whatever. You can be a little more proactive. Write your story out. Tell them why they should be your fan. Talk about what you are, who you're for, and who you aren't. And people will really start to resonate. Other than just being like, I know they do web design. You know? Like, it's not that it's not valuable. It's that you're losing value in not doing the great web design that you can do for them. So if you're not telling these stories, like, you know, pardon my language, like a shitty web design place probably take your spot. You don't want that. I'm pandering a little bit because I know the crowd.
All right, thank you, Matt. I appreciate you being here. So, thank you, Matt, again. One more time. We're running a little short on time, and we'll do introductions, so we'll do that. If you can make it brief, then we'll start on this side of the room. So if you can stand and say who you are. If you have an ask, go ahead with that. So we'll start over here. If you don't want to, you can pass it on to the next person.
We're from Growing Hope. We're a nonprofit in Ipsy. We're looking at rebranding and doing a lot more marketing for growth.
What's this Growing Hope?
We promote access to healthy food in the community of Ipsy, so we run the farmers markets. We have a lot of youth in schools programs, and we work with seniors and a lot of food entrepreneurship.
Do you guys work with Cultivate? And those guys?
Yeah,
Becca's so awesome. Yeah.
If you could speak up a little for
We're
us.
not as cool. We're Julie McDonald from Ingenics Digital Marketing and our colleagues, Jacob and Danielle. We're inbound digital marketers. We do some branding and obviously our own branding. So we wanted to participate in today's.
And a fun fact, the owner of Ingenics started LA2M.
Yes, that's true.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd
I've
love-
been wearing
love
the
to chat.
t-shirt to bed every day. It's very comfortable.
There you go.
Yeah, if you guys ever want to chat branding and stuff.
Awesome.
feel free to
I
join.
would love to.
Yeah, you can nerd out about it. It's fun. Go, sorry, go.
I'm Matt Hansen. My company is LA2M Solutions. I build single-page applications, do a lot of digital design. Spent the last 10 years working on high, medium to high-level e-commerce sites. Decided to venture out on my own and kind of, actually built the first LA2M site 10 years ago. Ross, I built it with Ross.
Oh, okay.
So,
3.7.
circle
Legacy
back,
members.
and yeah, just putting myself back in the mix again.
My name is Jeff Boyle. I'm probably the last person you expect to find here. I'm actually a family medicine doctor, and I was actually talking to Chuck Holby earlier this morning about marketing my business, and he invited me over here to meet other people, learn about marketing, so I decided to give this a chance. But I go through my own practice and accepting new patients and just learning about marketing and trying to figure out how to best brand my practice, which is a little bit untraditional compared to most practices. It's called a direct primary care practice versus your fee-for-service, which most people with insurance are familiar with a direct primary care practice. It's basically a membership for care where people have access to me for the cost of a cell phone or cable plan and a whole host of other value that can be added to the membership. And so that's a little what I'm doing. I'm not reinventing the wheel with this style of care. It's been around for 15 years or so, and it's in Michigan already, but I'm the first doctor to bring it to the Ann Arbor area, so I'm just trying to get the word out.
Hey, I'm Matt Aldrich. I'm a board member here with LA2M, CEO at Rayle Media. We do web design, social media, videography. Happy to chat.
I'm Rick. I'm just here to learn some new stuff. I don't own my own company or anything, but I have started a few companies in the past and just working on building my own brand as a person. So thinking about some of these things kind of translate into that as well.
I'm Scott Reisfield. I'm starting a company called Stadium Music Box that will sell music boxes that play college fight songs in January. I have a background in marketing, both corporate and startup. And this is the first event I've done here, but I've done 2 events back in Conroe, Indians.
Did you want to go?
I'm with them.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'm David Bloom. I'm a coach with Factotum Constellation Business Accelerator.
My name's Carrie Alfian, and I am Carrie Cares Real Estate. My specialty is people who are downsizing, seniors. Third generation realtor here in Ann Arbor, know the area well for people looking to buy, and also I'm a marketing major, so I love selling houses and marketing them. So also here with Growing Hope, and
Is there a board president?
so in a wonderful organization, always looking for new ideas.
Hi, my name is Janet X, and I'm going to do my exercise and I have a question.
Sure.
Enhanced Endeavors is the only professionally learned provider of writing and editing services that tells your story in your voice, wherever you are nationwide, in a way that your target audience will embrace. And my question is, show of hands, how many people are here from organizations that have 10 or fewer employees? So about a third?
My name is Carrie Warla. I'm the Assistant Director of the Solution District Library, and we are in the process of just kind of updating our look, updating our services, and just trying to modernize a little bit.
I'm Mandy Hudson from Delirium Fitness. It's a locally owned fitness studio in Saline, and we offer cycling circuits and yoga at all times of day, and we're just looking to get our name out there more. So I'm here to look into how we can improve our reach.
I'm Tara, and this is Katie, and we're from High Scope, also a nonprofit from Ypsilanti, and we're kind of going through refreshing our brand as a 50-year-old organization. So that's why we're here today. And High Scope, for anybody who doesn't know, is an early education and research facility, so preschool and training teachers.
Rick Estes, Technical Solutions. I help grow and protect small businesses in ways they never thought.
I'm Christian Ward from Christian Ward Homes and Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. I'm a a marketer, happens to be in real estate, fascinated by marketing, I'd say almost everybody in here probably knows a realtor. There are over 1,200 of us in this market, so trying to stand out and be different is what I'm aiming for.
I'm Evan from Colossus Brady. We're a food service company in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're celebrating 50 years next year. Just kind of here to learn about branding. If anybody needs a quote on anything. Stacy does great work with Dollar Bill. I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, but if you guys need anything, we do have a full service sign and print shop. If you need banners or car wraps or vinyl wraps, things of that nature that maybe somebody else doesn't do. Get some business. Thanks for having us.
Chuck Colby with Cade Advertising. Cade is a company you may not have heard of too much so far because it's a company that is headquartered in Tallahassee, Florida, but owned in Michigan by a guy in Dexter, and we're opening a Michigan branch here. We've got a video production team here already, shooters and editors, and we'll give you a here in the Michigan area.
I'm Josh Pataki with Colossus Printing as well. Talk about branding is the work of building a brand. I think that is very key. 50 years of working to create the brand that they are, family owned. So I think that is a very good point. So thank you very much for your input.
Yeah, absolutely.
My name is Leah Jensen. I'm an independent contractor doing digital marketing for a paper company called Crazy Richards for the last 5 years and some other art show in Ann Arbor and a couple things. And I also help with LA2M. It would be so helpful if you are on Facebook to check in to the event, just to help share that. And if you would like to listen to this video again or have somebody that you work with listen to it, it will be up on the website and we'll also share it online and you can listen to it while you're working on it.
My name is Kim Merkel and I own King Community Marketing. We promote businesses and organizations through a creative combination and also customized of both community outreach and also business development. It's a fresh approach, it works, and while you're growing your business, you also have an opportunity to give back to the community that you serve.
Amy Mop House, I develop and work with green energy, green building material.
I'm Roger Rayle. I do the videoing for this and several other worthy community events. Also run Ann Arbor Video Interest Group, which you need to come to as it happens tonight. It's usually the second Wednesday of the month. And we talk about various topics, including videos, all sorts of things.
I'm Carter Sherline, Photography Studios, and I'm a commercial editorial and portrait photographer. You're either running or golf, probably the same thing. There's various events around the state. This meeting, and I'll be at H2B.
Hi, I'm Stacy from Dollar Bill Printing, your local print shop. I've been there 30 years. So any printing questions you have, you can ask me. More importantly, I'm one that plans the monthly meetings for here. So if you know of a speaker or a topic that you want, write me and let me know. And make sure you go on our website and sign up for our newsletter so you get my emails of what the upcoming speakers will be as I send them out during the month. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. And just real quickly, just so we can get feedback, Stacey's going to be passing around a survey to the different tables. And if you don't mind just taking just a brief minute, and start with number 7. Start with number 7. I have not changed that yet. It should be number 1, but start with number 7, and then go back to number 1. But if you can do that, then give us great feedback, and we get really good productions and presentations here, just like we did today. So, and also too, our next speaker, since we're getting monthly programs, it's always the second Wednesday of the month. So our next one is December 12th, which is Story Cutting Cuts the Clutter by Sean Hickey. So,
Storytelling.
Storytelling. And then feel free to stick around and network, or if you saw somebody you'd like to connect with, feel free to do that too. So.
And we're 3 minutes early.
Yes, which is great. So thank you again, Matt, for coming here and sharing your talents. Awesome job.
I forgot to put the slide up, but if you guys want the slide deck or anything like that, just Matt at Cultivate or at Matt on brand on social media. This is a service to the community.
Right here.